guess you wonder where I've been. I searched to find the love within.
Before this video starts, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for all the support. This upcoming list of shops is obviously very subjective as well, based on my own sort of personal taste and I guess my personal style as well. If you have any suggestions or any places you've been to or enjoyed shopping at, please let me know in the comments and I'm happy to check those out one day. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video and thanks again for all the support.
Make me do for love what I would not do.
If you're familiar with the Tokyo thrift scene or even shopping scene in general, you'll recognize the shop behind me. Yes, that is Berberjin. In my opinion and the opinion of many others, probably the most famous and most well-known vintage and thrift shop here in Japan. Rarest vintage you can get, the most sort of grailed pieces you can get as well, which explains a really high price point. Behind me is sort of the first level, the main level. Vintage tees, vintage band tees, vintage whatever kind of tees. Craziest fade. You go downstairs to the basement, they have more workwear styles, polo, a lot of reverse weave. These guys have been around for maybe 20 odd years and definitely something you need to check out when you're in Japan.
Make me do for love what I would not do.
I just made it outside probably what has become my favorite vintage store slash chain of vintage store here in Japan. We're outside Jam. Honestly, one of the biggest spaces I've ever been to from a vintage shopping perspective. The most well-rounded store you can find in Tokyo. If you're looking for a one-stop shop to go to, Jam is your place. They have several branches throughout Japan. I think this is the first one in Tokyo. They have dedicated sections, dedicated styles, dedicated genres throughout the whole store. It's amazing actually. Let's go.
I guess you wonder where I've been. I searched to find the love within. I came back to...
This next place behind me is an institution, probably one of my favorites. There's of course New York Joe Exchange or New York Joe's. If you have kept up with the channel for the past couple of years, you would know that I shop at New York Joe and sell at New York Joe in Shibuya quite a bit. So they have a branch here in Kichijoji right behind me. They have one branch in Shibuya and one more in Shimokitazawa as well. So I think there's 3 in Tokyo from my understanding. Every branch and every store has this sort of similar vibe of kind of lower price or mid-tier kind of pricing relative to other places. Not too brand heavy, but you can find some really good hidden gems and just really friendly staff. This place behind me and upstairs is none other than Don Down on a Wednesday. Shout out to my boy Richard Nakagawa for getting me onto this 2 or 3 years ago. What can I say about Don Down? A combination of ragtag, so they curate, buy and sell branded stuff, but also New York Joe, so they have that kind of generic, kind of more affordable, traditional kind of vintage that we all know and love without necessarily having those brands too. For me, it's the perfect balance of that type. One of the most legit shops, bro, honestly. One of the most legit.
Make me do for love what I would.
Probably one of my favorites for sure, one of my favorite chains. And if you see that logo, you know what it is. Flamingo. Any type of really workwear, Americana, that type of genre of clothing, these guys have it to a T. Pricing is about mid to expensive depending on the brand and type of item as well, but you get your bang for your buck here. There's no overpricing in my opinion, and I reckon Flamingo do the best job in dressing their mannequins and adding accessories and just outfit inspiration type of fits as well. They got 2 more stores in Harajuku and 2 more stores in Shimokitazawa as well, so you definitely can find these guys around if you're doing a bit of thrift. Flamingo, one of the best for sure in Tokyo and in Japan. Check it out. Next up on this list in the suburb of Koenji, this place is called Big Time. Big Time have a couple of branches in Tokyo, one here in Koenji obviously, and another really big one in Shimokitazawa as well. This one's actually super good. I think it has a lot more variety than the one in Shimo. Not just your military, not just your sailor style, a lot of sportswear surprisingly, the kind of reverse weave type of vibes, Fruit of the Loom prints, Hanes, you know, that type of genre of vintage. One of my favorite chains and one of the first places I ever shopped at when I came to Japan the very first time, no other than Chicago. Probably one of the most famous kind of vintage or thrift chains in Tokyo. These guys are definitely more of that middle of the road price point. A lot of good stuff in that you can find, a lot of denim, a lot of military, a lot of sailor style. a bit of polo as well. Chicago is very seasonal and very well organized as well, so I can definitely recommend checking it out if you're here in winter time, summertime, whatever time. This place is a vibe, and you'll definitely enjoy the shopping experience when you come here as well.
Make me do for love what I would not do.
The shop is called Real. Probably one of the best shops you can shop for vintage polo. Every time I've gone inside, they've always either had Snow Beach, for example, different iterations of Stadium 92 jackets, all different type of polo, button-ups, rugbies, you name it, it's in there, and very high prices as well. Real, one of the best for sure on this crazy street in Koenji. Yeah. This shop right behind me is, in my opinion, one of the heavyweights of the thrift scene here in Koenji, known as Slat or Slat, depending on how you pronounce it. This is the main kind of flagship store here in Koenji. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, again, the typical kind of store that you expect here in Tokyo, but just has so much variety, the rarity of pieces. They have some really good Levi's, some good loafers, the type of style as well. So Slat or Slat, check it out here in Koenji, one of the best that you can find. First of all, if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed the list. Again, please let me know if you have any suggestions or if you've had your experiences with these shops as well. Would much appreciate it. Back in Koenji, my favorite neighborhood, and I am right outside. Right behind me is, in my opinion, the #1, yes, Ichiban, the #1 vintage or thrift store in Tokyo. And in my opinion, these guys have the best vintage leather shoe collection in the game. It's on point. You can find paraboots here, you can find wallabies here, other types of Clarks as well, Doc Martens, Kleeman, Churches, and other styles of loafers as well, and just derby kind of shoes too. From my understanding and getting to know the owners over the years a little bit, they have two shops. We also have two shops. So the main storefront behind me obviously has all the shoes you can see there. Then on the inside, more of the apparel is kind of 40s to 70s type of style. Really kind of classic vintage. Just down there, you'll see another store as well, and that pretty much has more loafers, more leather shoes too. And also if you go upstairs there, it's more sort of 70s to 90s to 2000s types of vintage. I just feel like the overall shopping experience when you go inside shops like Whistler is second to none, and that is why they're on the top of my list. I feel like every time I go to Whistler, I always feel like I can buy something if I really wanted to, whether it be shoes or clothing or anything else as well. So if you're ever in Japan, if you're ever in Tokyo and you find yourself in Koenji, please check out Whistler, both shops. You won't be disappointed. Next shop on this list is called Safari. These guys have several chains throughout Tokyo. I'm outside the Kichijoji one. These guys aren't as brand heavy as some of the other shops on this list. I guess a combination of that kind of Salvation Army, non-curated stuff, and a lot of the other shops that do have some curation. They've got shoes as well as normal apparel too, so a lot of variety. And again, just so many chains. Like I think there's 4 or 5 different shops within Tokyo itself, so highly recommend it. That is Safari. Next up is another gym here in Harajuku. This is one of my favorites, Chameleon, just tucked away in this corner, kind of close to the main street as well. These guys have a lot of Kangol, Nike, a lot of sprays, a lot of more sportswear based type of vintage, a lot of accessories and chains as well. For sure, one of the most vibiest shops in Shimokitazawa is right behind me is Suna Vintage Clothing. A lot of different sort of sportswear and that type of genre of clothing particularly, and more of that sort of hip-hop kind of streetwear vintage type of style that I still love. I highly recommend checking out Suna. Super good.